Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever we're broadcasting from. My name is Eric Iduru, and I am the Senior Technical Advisor on the CARE Global VSLA team, specifically on digital. And today I've brought together a panel of amazing ladies who are just like specialists in their fields, and we're going to be discussing the digital care package and their role in what we're doing, with them explaining some of the experiences they've had and some of the challenges they're facing in this particular space. So just a quick brief on the digital care package. It is a digital strategy that we at CARE have designed to see how we can integrate the use of technology into the work we're doing with VSLA groups. So addressing 4 of the key major barriers that we found, that being access to devices, digital literacy, and confidence building among women, addressing social norms, and also making sure that content that's provided to our women and the participants in our programs is relevant to them. So without any further ado, I will have our 4 panelists introduce themselves. I think I'll start up with my screen. I'll start with Lauren.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. My name is Lauren Hendricks, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of a startup called Keyphone. And fun fact about myself is that I'm a twin.
Oh, Sona. Sorry.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Sona Gandhi. I'm the managing director of Chamoka, which is a smartphone application, which I'm sure we'll be speaking about later. Fun fact about myself is that I used to live in Amman and in Guatemala. Back to you, Eric.
Beatrice.
Hi, everyone. My name is Beatrice Mawemoko. I'm the manager for strategic partnerships and business development at MTN. Fun fact about me, I only sing while in the bathroom. I can't.
And last but not least, Juanita.
Hello, everyone. My name is Juanita Ramez. I am the Technical Assistant Specialist at Trigama, a global women-focused economic inclusion development organization. The fun fact about myself is kind of emerging of the 2 other ladies here. I am also a twin, and I also used to live in Amman, and I'm currently in Amman. Hello, everyone.
We're even closer tied to each other than I initially thought. Thought it was just a work thing, but this is cool. So I'm just gonna dive right in, and I'll start with asking like a question to each of you, and it's relevant to like the work we're doing, but also relevant to the work you're doing. So I'll start with Lauren again. Sorry, Lauren, you're just on the top of my screen, so I'm picking on you. So do you think there's a correlation between access to devices being able to increase the use of digital financial services among women or rural communities? What's your thoughts on this?
Well, since I started a startup specifically to increase access to devices to get more women access to digital financial services, I'm going to go with yes. So yeah, I think, and just to give everybody a 30-second background on Keyphone, because they might not know what we do. We're a little bit new. We provide free devices and data to the 70% of Africa that's unconnected. And we partner with groups like CARE that have women's savings and credit groups organized to provide phones to the women in those groups to get them online and help them help increase their access. We generate revenue through lock screen advertising. That's not important in this conversation right now. But the other thing we do is that the content we provide is rewarded content. So when people watch it, they're able to earn points, and they can use those points then to buy data and airtime. I think, as most of us know, in Africa in particular, I know this is a global conference, but in Africa, the cost of data and airtime is extremely high and really prohibitive. And I think a lot of our colleagues often in Asia are surprised by that, because in markets like India, airtime and data are so inexpensive. It makes it easy for people to get online, but the cost of data and airtime in African markets is a real big barrier. So I think there's a couple of things we find. One is that there's still such a massive gender gap in access to devices, and access to basic devices, but also in access to smart devices. And that is a gender gap that we are not seeing change. Globally, the gender gap in access to smartphones hasn't changed. It stalled out, particularly with the pandemic, at about 18%. But that number really belies the fact that in Africa, the gender gap in access to smartphones is 37%, and in South Asia, it's 41%. So we're just seeing women massively being left behind as the developing world goes online. And for most of the developing world, as they go online, they're going to do it through smartphones, not through laptops or computers the way that we do it. But we know that just owning a device doesn't automatically lead to using digital financial services. There's still a real knowledge and information gap there. Women don't necessarily have access to the same level of information. Women often cite information and lack of skills as their number one barrier to using a smartphone. So just having the device itself isn't what's going to get them online. And we definitely found this ourselves, just anecdotally when we were out in the field, Eric, distributing phones to the care groups. We saw huge differences, particularly between women who were in a peri-urban area. Many of them had seen smartphones before. Maybe someone in their household had one. They had used them before. So as soon as they got them in their hand, they were asking us, hey, can I start selling my goods on WhatsApp? That's the number one question you get from anyone who knows how to use a smartphone. But when we would distribute smartphones in rural areas, some women had never seen them, never held them. They don't know how to swipe. So we had a whole digital literacy curriculum developed, and in the end, you're teaching women how to swipe and how to press the button to turn the phone on and off. So you can't just assume that just putting a device in someone's hand is going to mean that they're able to access digital financial services. But at the same time, particularly smartphones are going to make that transition for them so much easier. Smartphones have apps. Apps that are able to be delivered in their local language and their local context, rather than using a complicated kind of USSD process in order to access basic financial services. So access devices, critical, but access to smart devices where people can have a more user-friendly interface, I think also critical to getting women online. And I'll leave it at that, and we can come back to it in the discussion.
No, that's amazing, because you touched upon like so many things that this whole program is developed around. The fact that you just can't put a phone in someone's hand and expect them to use it, making sure that we have like adequate training as a precursor to like getting a device is something that we've been like thinking about very carefully. So I'm very excited to hear you speak on that, especially as someone who's providing devices to the beneficiaries at the end of these programs that are being tailored to cater to communities. One of the main things is actually making sure that we had partnerships that were curated with organizations that are addressing several angles, and that's how Keyphone came into play. And I think your model is fantastic, and obviously we can get into that later, or anyone who's interested can reach out to Lauren and talk to her about that. But I'll move right on to Beatrice. Let's switching up on my screen. So Beatrice, for someone who works in the mobile, what do you call it? Mobile operator network, is that how it's referred to as?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on like access to devices, and how do they increase like digital financial services? I'm thinking like specifically mobile money, online banking, particularly in rural communities. Please educate us.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. At MTN, we believe that everybody deserves access to a connected life. So, and for people to be able to achieve this, having a smartphone or a device, a phone, but a smartphone in addition to just a smart feature device is very key and important. What we have seen, like in the data for the people who have, used the smartphone for the first time, or switched from, a feature phone to a smartphone, we've seen them uptake more services of the mobile money platform. We've seen them interact. Obviously, we'd see them buy more data because now the smartphone has apps and everything. But what is interesting, we've also seen them use more financial services because it somehow seems like when somebody takes a smartphone, there is a higher level in literacy, like they get to learn more as they're interacting with the phone, they're trying to explore around it. So they get to understand other features that are not only on the smartphone, but also on the mobile money platform. So we've seen an increase in the platform. On our side, we call them bank tech services, what you've asked, Eric. And those are basically the savings and lending services, but also the investment options. And what is very interesting is that most of those services are being taken up by women. The savings and the investment, when you look at the gender split between the people who have, applied for the services. So when somebody has a smartphone, they're able to interact with more services on our platform, take on additional services. We call them advanced services, which are not just the P2P, let's say, sending money, because everybody, whether a feature phone or what, they will send money to each other, but we see them shift and take on more advanced services, take on the bank tech services, the loans and savings. We see them take on pay-go services where they opt to buy solar and pay it, over a period of time. We see them interact with other different advanced services that we have on the platform, and even using, most especially using the mobile money wallet as, their savings wallet. And when you look at the savings split between what men and women are saving, you'll find that women are saving more via the platform than the men, which is quite interesting. But as MTN, we've positioned ourselves, apart from all that, to see that we enable and support women in, taking on financial services. We have something that we call Yellow Care, where we target women, businesses, SMEs, and we support them. We also have projects where we target women agents, like mobile money agents, but we specifically recruit women. And what is interesting is that the growth in their transaction volumes that they're doing off the platform, the women agents grow almost like 10 times in a period of 6 months, which is very interesting, because for them, they will not just take it as they take it on as their main source of income, because most of them are stay-at-home mothers and everything, especially in the rural area. So they take on as their main source of income. So you'll see that the activity keeps on growing. And in most rural areas where we recruit them, we realize that they are trusted, and trust is very, very key in those areas. So so many other women come to their tills to do transactions with them, which is one of the reasons that we think why their transaction volumes keep on, growing enormously, especially in the first 12 months. Yeah, thank you.
No, it's interesting because you've touched on a few things that I'm constantly thinking about. One of them being the services that mobile money networks or mobile operators offer to women. What are you guys doing to popularize it? And sometimes you find out about it when you get there, but it's not like mainstream. Not everyone is able to just get on MTN and find out, oh, there's this service offered to women. So I'd be interested to learn more about that, and perhaps we can come to that later. And the second thing would be mobile money charges. It's a big conversation everyone's talking about. In rural communities, people have issues when it comes to the transaction fees. And you know, like trying to explain to someone that you'll save that 500 shillings in transaction fees. If you had to walk to this place, that's time that you're spending. So like, what are you guys doing to address that? Again, we can come back to this later. I see questions in the chat, but I will move from you to, I'll just pick random Juanita. So the work you've done with us, Ken and Trickle Up have been engaged in, is about the digital literacy curriculum. I wanted to know, how did you guys develop the digital training curriculum, and how do you think this is going to help contribute to or increase the uptake of digital practices among, you know, rural communities?
Wonderful. Thank you, Eric. In listening to the other speakers, it sounds like Trickle Up's digital literacy curriculum kind of falls at the nexus between mobile service providers and the end users, being rural women in Uganda, trying to access digital financial services in the midst of COVID. As some of you may know, Trickle Up invests in women who live in extreme poverty and provides them with a variety of tools and curriculums to help on their trajectory out of extreme poverty. Working specifically to create this digital literacy curriculum as part of our Graduating to Resilience project with AFC and AIR Foundation implemented in Rwanda, we began by conducting a needs assessment to understand sort of what the end user needs, this human-centered design focus. Once we sort of understood that most of these women had never used a smartphone before, it was really taking a step back and working with the teams to develop a digital literacy curriculum and videos that guided these women step by step through 4 key areas. There were smartphone basics, mobile money, referencing MTN, the risks and benefits of your smartphone, including some of the gendered risks that women may face. And then, of course, access to MobiPay AgroBase, which is an application that is essential to women in rural communities in that it provides some connections to agro-input dealers. But we didn't just stop there. Once we had drafted the curriculum, we then piloted it in the community to make sure that it was relevant, that the language was understandable with the communities, and then took the opportunity to adapt given some of the comments that we heard while we were in the community. So it's a really iterative process, which made sure to keep our population at the center and have them lead through the guidance of what their needs are.
Nice. No, I like that. It's like human-centered design. So it's like it's been thought through from the bottom up. It's not an idea that we're bringing from, you know, our perspective and trying to implement it with people who have no idea how to use it. So I found it very useful when I initially saw the curriculum. I was like, wow, this is cool. It's 4 sessions. It can be done over, you know, either a 4-week period or in a 4-hour period. And the way we're using it is we're integrating it into like with the older groups who've already gone through the initial VSLA group setup. We're integrating it into the savings meetings. So they meet once a week. Once a week, we provide them with that 1 session. And we found when we asked most of the groups, they're like, absolutely, we would love to do this. We'd love to learn more about smartphones. And they're also eager to teach. So like you find the people who are picking up quickly, eager to become like digital champions, which is something that we're trying to embed into like our programming. So it's amazing to see the collaboration. And then like randomly, one of the products you're teaching about is an MTN based product, and so it like connects. So I'll move on to Sona. Sona and we speak every day, but Sona, what role do you feel applications, tools like Chomoka play in closing the digital divide? So with the work you're doing, do you believe that the services like services provided like Chomoka offer an entry point to working with women? And what else can these things offer to women?
Thanks, Eric. So just to back up a bit, Chamoka is an Android smartphone application, which seeks to narrow the digital gender divide by leveraging savings group methodology to build trust and transition savings groups to the digital economy. We're currently present in 5 countries in East and West Africa and have approximately 50,000 users. I think Chamoka and other digital saving solutions have a really integral role to play in partnership with organizations, companies like Keyphone and Trickle Up and MTN. In, I think, tackling the first hurdle, which is that of trust. I think we all know that the populations that we're targeting have been the targets or the victims, or maybe survivors is a better word, of a number of different circumstances over the years and generations in which their wealth, their assets that they've trusted with other organizations, have either been taken or have not multiplied in the way that perhaps they were told that they would be. And so I think building trust so that they are now willing to accept a digital version of, let's say, their savings group records is the first step in that journey that will take us to narrowing that digital gender divide. Savings groups are, I think maybe most of us on this call know, are prevalent, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, where many of us focus. And it's a trusted community-based platform that Chamoka has leveraged to transition slowly at sort of a low risk entry point groups to a new way of savings. So I think that's the first hurdle. I think the second hurdle are those that Lauren and Juanita and Beatrice all referenced, which is just because somebody has a phone, we're learning it doesn't mean that we have now narrowed the digital gender divide, right? Eric knows this better than anyone in our conversations. We often spend a lot of time talking about, well, how do we actually make that transition? Because even if I have an application and Lauren has a phone and we now have a phone with an application on it, and it's sitting in the hands of someone that we're trying to serve, they have access to it 1 hour a week, perhaps. In some cases, in other cases, okay, they have it all the time, but there is a great deal of digital literacy training that needs to occur, which is why what Juanita and her organization, their work is so critical, because there's a similarly challenging hurdle after the trust is the proficiency with using the tool and learning how to navigate the tool. And then I would say that, okay, the question is then what? Our groups say, okay, we've got this interesting tool. We can now, our meetings are a lot faster. We can run through a savings group meeting in 30 minutes where it used to take us an hour, 2 hours. What else? And that's where what Beatrice and MTN and other MNOs are doing are so critical, because it helps us create an ecosystem, create a community where our communities can really flourish, because we have platforms like the ones that MTN is creating, where with a very low fee structure, assets can be created, they can be grown, and networks can be created ultimately to increase the standard of living of our communities. So I think that absolutely applications have a key role to play, but that needs to be done in partnership with with phone access, with training on how to use the phones, and then finally, of course, connections on how to leverage both of those.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I like the way, it's about building trust within these communities. So like using an app like Tomoka as an entry point to the group that is already something that's generated that trust within the community is a good thing. And like that's where we talk about like relevant content. So relevant digital content specifically. So Tomoka would be helpful for the group in bringing them onto this platform where they can have digitized record keeping, and then creates that linkage to products like MTN, where they can now access other services on a digital platform. And obviously the digital literacy being the most, that's the key thing. Like we have to start at the top, like train people how to use phones before bringing them an app. I always see situations where people are trying to teach farmers how to use drones to detect weather patterns, and I'm like, wait, what? How did we get from there to there? Teach them how to use a phone, then slowly ease them into using things like drones. Yeah, so no, it's great to get an understanding of like what everyone is doing and how these pieces come together. And so we can open the floor up to a few, conversations. I want to go back to Beatrice. Uh, when we talked about the transaction fees, that's always that elephant in the room. And when you talk to groups, when you talk to people in rural communities, they're like, oh no, it's too high, it's too expensive. And what we saw during the pandemic was a shift to, fees being slashed and people starting to uptake the services a lot more. But as things started to stabilize and more in-person interactions happened, those fees returned. So what are you guys doing? It might not be a question you can specifically answer, but like from your experience, what are your thoughts on this?
Thank you, Eric. So I think the market, at least for Uganda, is still transitioning, and our customers will have to bear with us as we go through the transition and the market maturing and everything. But after the pandemic, like you've mentioned, I think, was it early this year, we almost slashed the transaction charges by 50% for, P2P sending P2P transactions. So which was a huge step in having the fees reduced. But in addition to that, we are trying to build ecosystems around where our customers are to ensure that they do not have to cash out, because if somebody does not move the money out of the ecosystem, then there is no reason why they should, incur a fee. So you would realize that right now in Uganda, we have a lot of, we call it Momo Pay, but they're codes that somebody can use their merchant codes that a customer can use to pay to a merchant, and they will not, necessarily pay. So they would have, saved on the transaction fees or the withdrawal fees that they would have, incurred if they had gone and withdrawn the money, cashed out. So that is one of the initiatives that we are doing. But in addition to that, for products that we are building, let's say for, the VSLAs and, in relation to women, because in our market research and when we visited the VSLAs, they highlighted that this was one of the biggest challenges. And we are doing our best internally to solution around them, making sure that as long as they're still interacting within the group wallet or the wallet or the transactions happening between the group wallet and the members' wallet, that should be zero rated. So those are some of the directions that we are taking to ensure that we manage and reduce, the fees at the end of the day. Thank you.
No, I really like that the idea of building these ecosystems around the group. So like the services are available to them and the services can be paid for on mobile money, thus, you know,
Exactly.
not incurring these transaction fees. I like that. And it's, you know, it's Kenya has like still like pretty much like figured that out with M-Pesa. And like
Yeah.
every time I'm in Kenya, I'm like, man, you literally don't have, it's a cashless society to nearly everywhere, like to as far down as the rural communities, matatus,
Mm.
it's all being on these pay points. So I think building the ecosystem around them is crucial. And my thought would be like, again, popularizing these ideas, like, you know, using the media to like make sure people understand that that service is available. You don't have to do this to get to that point. You can just use your Momo Pay or use your, you know, Airtel Money, whatever the platform you're on is, would be cool. I see a question from Mark regarding devices conceived as piece of equipment, e.g. Chomoka. Okay, so Chomoka, that's a device for the group. What are the concrete ways to build digital literacy for all members and add value to all members? Empirically, does the one phone generate demand and result in more local ownership or usage? I can throw that out to anyone who's interested. Lauren, I see you.
Well, I'll just make a quick comment, which is, well, it may not be quick, but with Keyphone, we don't just give one device to the group. We give a device to every member of the group, and we do that for a couple of reasons. One is that our purpose at Keyphone is to have women own smartphones so that they can have access to digital financial education, so they can have access to online learning and mobile health, et cetera. And so we don't just give one device for the purpose of getting the group online to something like Chimoka, but what we do is then help them, you know, coordinate with Chimoka so that Chimoka and CARE, you know when we're doing those distributions, so they can help that group then, you know, start to use Chimoka and come online. One of the reasons that we, and I think this is something we haven't touched on and something that's important to talk about. One of the reasons that we are kind of emphatic about doing everyone in the group and not just one or two people in the group is that there's some really good research around gender and smartphone ownership and risks of backlash and GBV. And some of that research says that when you have a significant number of women in a community that own a phone versus one or two, you really see gender norms around women's phone ownership shift much more rapidly, and it becomes much more normalized in that community for women to own those devices. And so we actually think there's a risk in just giving one or two women smartphones in a community versus kind of making it, oh, everyone in the VSLA has a smartphone. The community's kind of used to like, oh, those VSLA women, you know, do certain things, have certain assets. So from a safety point of view, we think it's better that all the women get it, but also our purpose is to have all the women, you know, women becoming active phone users. And so we think having a mass of women who can teach each other, help each other, support each other as they become active smartphone users is important. And also that's how we partner with MTN. MTN comes with us to every community when we do a distribution. They get all the women registered on their SIM cards. They get them registered for Momo Pay, right? It's in MTN's interests. They've now kind of automatically have, you know, 25 to 40 brand new customers who are all on their service and who are supporting each other to use that service. It's in Chimoka's interest because they can now, they have a group that can use the app, and they can even start to think about how the app can expand now to have, you know, individual users so I think it's in everybody's interest to see all the members get access to devices.
No, that's great. And it also spins back to the two questions from Wisdom. Wisdom, how are you? That link to both the conversation you just had about, you know, device ownership. So like we're asking, this will be directed at both Juanita and Beatrice. So Beatrice, what things are MTN doing to, you know, to drive the ownership of smartphone and distribution and digital literacy in rural communities? And then to you, Juanita, is the curriculum adopted into different languages? Is it available? Where can people find it? Is there audio? Is it all Yeah. Who's gonna?
Thanks, Eric. So for the distribution of smartphones, we have some products that that are trying to encourage people uptake phones, like we call it device financing, where somebody can pay for a smartphone over a period of time instead of paying the whole lump sum at once. And it has been popular in the uptake of that product has been popular in the rural communities. But also we encourage the people to use the devices by giving them, can I call it, data? They are bundles that given to the first time users to encourage them to use the data on their phone and access the different services, use their apps, and use the mobile money app and etc, because that way we are building a behavior for them to interact with all these other services that are available for them online. So those are some of the things that we are doing. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. And then Juanita.
Right, yes. So speaking where you can find the digital literacy curriculum, it is trickleup.org/equals, which will have links to downloading digital literacy curriculum. It's currently not available on USSD, but it is available. There are accompanying videos in English, Runia Katara, Kenya, Wisha, and Kiswahili. Those are where those are the languages in which it is available.
Okay, cool. No, that's good. So Wisdom, you can check it out. It's open source as well, so anyone can use it and edit it to like fit the programs that they're working with. Because we're using it also in Rwanda. So open question. To all of you, anyone can take this. Does digital literacy increase the efficiency of VSLA groups, and by how much? And how are we assessing this? Like, is there a way, like, because we're trying all this out now, but I know we've spoken a lot about digital literacy being very important, but then how do we assess that need or that change or the impact it has on the users of the devices after they go through it? Maybe Juanita, seeing as this is your field of expertise, we'll throw this ball back to you.
I think digital literacy, I don't want to speak specifically to whether or not it increases the efficiency of the SLAs. I think what it does is it builds the capacity of women to diversify their access to sustainable livelihoods, to economic participation, and really build useful skills that they will continue to need in the digital economy, in the economy and digital economy. So in that respect, I think it builds the efficiency of the SLAs and provides access to previously isolated rural communities in ways that are not possible without the digital connection.
Okay, that's cool. And so on that note, like from the experience that we've all had in the field, like what do you think is the most challenging thing for the development sector? Beatrice, you face this from the private sector. You're coming in from that angle. Tomoka is an application which is, a private sector app working in the development space. Are there any main hurdles that you find that you're facing, like specifically with working with rural communities or with women, and how, the development sector, NGOs like CARE, what can we do to make our programming more efficient and more effective? Anyone can take it. It's
okay. Thanks, Eric. I think from from our side and the interactions we've had with the women in rural communities, what was surprising, they understand the products, okay? For example, on the MTN platform, but there is fear of like fees. You know how people think that there is a fee on everything, and yet some of those do not actually have. So we need to continue training for the women on how to use and the products, and the fees that are in relation, because it was the biggest fear actually of uptaking these different services. But also I realized that most of the services that have been taken up by these women have been promoted by word of mouth and not really by our mass marketing and everything, because the community is built a lot on trust. There is a lot of promoting of the different products by word of mouth. So I believe that when we have the buy-in of the women after we've trained them, and then they trust the product and they have used it, then they will be able to even help us market it by word of mouth, because they trust each other. Now it will not just be, for example, MTN advertising something, on the radio and everything, but it will be your neighbor telling you about a product, a saving product that has worked for them, or telling you about the loans product that they used, without going through the ambiguity of paperwork, that they applied off their smartphone. And so once we have them learning about the product and then using it and trusting it, and then they can promote it to their other people, I think that is the direction that we need to take. Thank you.
I really like that. So it's like we can leverage your needs as a private sector entity to then build off the programming we're doing, because we can be an entry point for MTN to access these rural communities, because they trust us. We've been working there for years. We've done programming with them. So embedding some of your programming or lessons that you want to teach into the work we're doing will then ease the process of like transitioning people from like, oh, they're trying to sell us gold and we don't have money, to, oh wow, that actually is helpful. I like that. I'll throw it to Lauren. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I thought Beatrice made some great points. And I think she's completely right in terms of kind of the virality of things and the way, we can promote what we want, but women are going to find what works for them, and then they're going to tell all their friends about it. And that's going to, that may or may not be the particular feature that we were promoting, but that's definitely the way it works. We found with Keyphone, we're a device, and then we're also an app. We hadn't planned on being an app. I mean, we are an app. It's available on the Play Store, but our whole business model was around giving out phones. But we found that women were just telling their neighbors, hey, you should download this app because you can earn points and get data for that. And now we have 400,000 people who've done that, and we didn't promote it. It just kind of happened because it was a useful feature for people. So I think paying attention to user behavior is really, really critical. Find out what they're doing and what they're using, and then double down on that and figure out how you can add and bundle services around that. I also think there is a huge amount of coordination that needs to be happening at local levels between private sector and development players. A huge example is just around like minimum levels of connectivity. One thing we found is that it's no use to give people phones if they live in an area that doesn't have good coverage. But actually getting detailed coverage maps and figuring out like which communities, like down to the local community level, which communities have good 3G coverage, 4G coverage, is actually very difficult to do. So having a more coordinated relationship between telcos, development organizations, groups like us that are trying to come in and work on devices, I think is really critical, so that there can be some joint planning around, okay, where's MTN building out connectivity? How can we as a development community come in then and piggyback on that? So we're making sure that we're building out, as they're building out connectivity, we're providing people with the devices and the tools and the apps that they need to be active users, or vice versa. Is there a particularly important area that we want to go to that we need to try and pull the telcos into to open that? I think the one other issue is, and we haven't talked about it very much, but back to devices a little bit, that, there's a lot of talk about, what the development community is doing to try and bridge the digital gender divide. But the reality is the digital gender divide is a device divide. And there's a lot more the development community can and should be doing to try and make devices more available and more affordable. You see a lot of device financing out there with groups like MCOPA, even, MTN has some great device financing that you can, and I think MTN and MCOPA actually in Uganda have a partnership. But those tend to be more high-end devices. And so, the development community coming in and helping to set up financing programs with, we've built this whole range of MFIs out there. We should be supporting them to do device financing for the lower end devices that can get a lot more people online.
Yeah, like set up an entry pack basically. Because right now,
right. I mean, we use a phone that's about $70 retail. It's 2 GB, 32 GB RAM, 5G capable. There are good quality, low cost devices out there that can get a lot of people online.
Yeah. It's actually interesting that you say that. So like that whole collaborative network that we can create with, private sector, the development sector, the government, to like make, packages that are more tailored to these populations. I was in Uganda last week and went out to visit a group in Gulu and went down there with the team from MCOPA, and they had, it's a very decent phone. It's the Nokia, but the main issue was the price point. The whole structure of the payment plan is very user friendly, but the initial like down payment being nearly 200,000 shillings, you're coming to a VSLA group in rural Gulu, no one's going to pay that. And the group's feedback is, hey, why don't you make it lower and make the payment period a lot longer? Then we can afford it, because they want it. They just can't be paying a 200,000 down payment. So yeah, I think creating that collaborative environment where we're working with organizations who are in the same space from the different areas will be beneficial in like getting us to a place where programming is actually tailored to these rural communities. And that's what we're planning to do with the digital care package. And this is how this session was created. It's a people from the private sector with development working together. So I'll do the same thing to
Eric,
you,
I just want to piggyback on one thing you said, which is I think is so important, which is it is not a demand problem. Everybody wants a smart device. They know the benefit that it can have for them. The first thing our women do is hand it to their kids. The more that we get phones in women's hands, smartphones in women's hands, the more we're helping to create a digitally native next generation. So it's not a demand problem. It's a supply problem. And the development community can fix the supply problem.
Yeah, we have the numbers that the private sector wants to work with. It's very evident, and like if you tailor it to what we can provide, it's a match made in heaven. I like that. So now, balls in your court.
So maybe just addressing, some of what Lauren was saying. It's demand versus supply. I think that there is also a quality versus quantity discussion that needs to be had in terms of setting expectations, or at least aligning expectations. I know that every few years or so, there is a new innovation, let's say, within the development sector, which catches everyone's imagination. And we have so much energy, and there's sort of a focus for panels and all of our resources. And I'm so excited to be a part of the digital transformation discussion that's happening. At the same time, while there is legitimate excitement about the potential for digital to enable cheaper, faster, more efficient, more secure everything, let's say, more transparency, less time, etc. I think there needs to be an acknowledgement that doesn't happen overnight. And because the goal is that things are cheaper and faster, doesn't mean that getting there is going to be cheaper and faster, and that we are undermining our own success if we assume that the road to getting there means that we have to pay even less for training and less for implementation and less for follow-up, because it's a road that we've all been talking about with respect to trust and digital literacy, and getting the phones into the hands of our women and into the children. This is a commitment. This is not a panacea. And I think that we've all seen solutions come and go in development, which were hailed as the next big thing. And I think that we all need to make a real commitment and just sort of understand that, yes, numbers are exciting, but we have to make sure that there's quality attached to those numbers, so that we can ensure that these are sustainable changes that we all are working toward.
No,
numbers are great.
absolutely.
I applaud every effort that's being made to get phones and literacy and the connections out there. We all want to make it stick. We all want to make sure that it outlives all of us.
No, you're 100% correct on that front, because if you do deliver a bad product, it won't last. And as is evident with like VSLA programming, the reason it still exists is because it was a well thought out, concept, and time was taken to develop curriculums, material to train people so that they can actually build this into the way they operate. So you're 100% correct. So when we come to training on digital literacy, let's embed that into what people know so that it becomes a normal thing. Like people start using an app because it's normalized within their system and they've learned how to use it properly. Because once you can't use it, you get frustrated and that's it. We're on to the next thing. So, Juanita, thoughts?
I think, we've spoken a lot about the issues from like the service provider and the uptake discussion, but I think there's also a really important point in recognizing the potential social and gender norm issues and how they can complicate integration and uptake. In fact, working with our communities, originally we had planned to do a group gender sensitization. And then due to some challenges with the group work, we ended up having to go follow up individually at the household level to mitigate potential gender complications associated with like the transfer of such a large asset through a digital device. And I think there's also a need to remember that a lot of these communities have never worked with smartphones before. And so it's essential that we meet women where they're at and we design curriculums and tools that recognize the digital gap. I think it's wonderful to talk about different apps and how we can use them. Like speaking about the MTM fees in our digital literacy curriculum, we were intentional in making sure as we introduce mobile money, we introduce the fee structure. We were intentional in making sure that like we introduce these communities to not just these apps and how to use them, but what it means step by step through the process, what the risks and benefits are, and just really reaching to meet their specific needs. Sorry for the background.
No worries. Yeah, no, I like the idea of like being very intentional, because that exact example of like the fee structure attached to using MTN mobile money or Airtel mobile money is so important, because you don't want to catch people off guard. Because every time I go, like when I first moved to the States, it's a good example. You go have dinner and you have, it's like $9.99 on the menu, and then the bill comes and it's like 12 something, and you're like, hey, whoa, what's going on here? Where did this extra money come from? But they didn't tell you about the tax and all that. So you get frustrated and it's like, I'm never eating again. But in reality, you have to eat. So no, it's good to like educate people on how everything ties together from the beginning. I mean, I think I'm not sure what our time is like, but maybe we can just I think we have 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Okay. So maybe we can close out with like 4 minutes. Okay. One minute to each person. Just give us your like views on digital inclusion and how we can change the world realistically. Starting with Juanita. You keep going last, so I'll start with you this time.
I think, Trickle Up invests in women. Our mission is to make sure that women in extreme poverty have access and the ability to assist themselves on their trajectories out of extreme poverty. When talking about the digital divide, you cannot exclude gender from these conversations. Women are leaders of their households, of their communities, and it's known to the world that if you provide a service to a woman, that she will be able to educate her household and her children. And so how do we change the world? I have to say, you have to invest in women. That's my pitch.
Beatrice.
Thanks. I think we are all well positioned to really add value to the women in the rural areas. So I think for me, where I sit as we wake up every day is to think outside my office, how can I help the lady at the grassroots improve her life? Because I know once I do this, I'm helping the whole generation. It's not just her, it's also with her children and everything. So let's use the opportunities, the resources that we have to ensure that the exposure and everything, to ensure that we come up with well-tailored, thought-through products that speak to the women. And then let's be intentional about ensuring that they understand and they use them, and also to get ourselves onto the grassroots to pick live feedback, like real-time feedback from them, and somehow involve them even in the co-creation of these products. It's very helpful, and it helps the products adoption for them to be adopted very fast, because you had them while you were designing the products at the end of the day. So let's use the resources that we have, the exposure, the opportunities, but also engage them as we are trying to develop the different solutions for them. Thank you.
Thanks, Beatrice. Sona?
I would say that human-centered design is the key to all of this, and I have been continually impressed and blown away as I've worked with each of these organizations and each of these women on the panel with me, or as I hear them talk about ensuring that the solutions that we're providing are relevant and really take into account what is useful, what is impactful for the end user from their perspective. And that's not easy, and it's not cheap, and it's not fast. But if we want to create lasting solutions and we want to change the world through digital solutions, as Eric asked, I think that's the only way to go. We work together and we make sure that we keep the women that we're thinking of at the center of everything we do. Thank you.
Lauren?
All right. Yeah, I completely agree with what everyone was saying. At the same time, I want to challenge us a little bit. We have not seen a significant shift in the digital gender divide in Africa or South Asia in the last 5 years. In Africa alone, there are 450 million women who need smartphones. So I think that we need to radically rethink what we're going to do to tackle the digital gender divide. And we need to be really innovating around what are new solutions and what can we do to really push the envelope and push the paradigm on how we get devices into women's hands and how we make sure that women are using them productively and enjoyably and safely. So I would really challenge everyone who's listening to really think outside the box and think about, you know, what's going to start to move the needle on bridging the digital gender divide.
Wow, thank you. That's amazing. And you guys have heard it all from these four incredible women working to close this digital gender divide. It's all about collaboration, innovation, and women-focused ideas that are relevant to the women we're working with. I'm a mama's boy, so I'm in full agreement with everything you just said. So on that note, I just want to thank you all so much for being part of this session. I really appreciate it. I hope everyone has enjoyed it. And links are in the bio, so you can reach out to everyone individually or reach out to us as a group, and we can tell you more about what we're doing at CARE. But from now, thank you very much, and have a good evening, a good day, or a good night, wherever you are. Thank you.